Okay, it is Sunday, January 18th, 2026. It is about 2:30 p.m. in my locale. It is a brisk 45 degrees here in McAlpin, Florida. It rained probably from 2:30 this morning until about noon, maybe a little bit later. Sun came out a little bit. Now it's kind of gray. And it's supposed to get down again to 29 tonight, which means you have to set the faucets to drip and do all those types of things because running water doesn't freeze. Okay, this is going to be a very different hermit with Wi-Fi video. Okay, I have been working on the edges of a hypothesis. Remember, I am probably the last classical scientist available. Probably the last. Hypothesis, method, experiment, analysis, conclusion. Not conclusion, parse the data, jerry-rig the experiment, develop the hypothesis. The scientific method runs in one direction. The other way is essentially evil. It's what they taught us when I was a wee lad in science class. So here's what I'm starting with. And it is a very rough hypothesis. Bear with me. Okay. I'm going to go, I have to talk about the environmental condition and the biological condition. And then we'll talk about the hypothesis. The environmental position, we're going to go all the way back to 2019. An existential threat. Authoritarian rules, which may or may not make sense under the existential threat. Wear this, do that, go here. If you go here, you can't do that. If you go over here, you can do this. Okay, breeding a lot of, and that's psych thing. Anxiety, confusion, and anger. The third piece right here is noise, propaganda, information concerning the authoritarian rules about the existential threat blared at your face over and over and over. The fourth end of it is right here. Feminism, lesser than, soft bigotry, all bubbled up. That entire big circle is what they call communism. Right. Collectivism, communism, you get it. That's the environment. Now let's talk about the biology. And this is the thing that I was thinking about. Because remember, I'm a biologist by trade. If you've never heard of a thing called a prion, today's your day. I'm looking at a definition here, which is pretty darn good. A prion is a misfolded protein. Because remember, proteins fold. The way that they're folded can help them do all sorts of things. Make insulin or cause problems, depending on how the protein folds. It's how the amino acids are assembled, how the protein folds. And a misfolded protein that acts as an infectious agent. It causes other proteins to misfold. You know this under Creutzfeldt-Jacobs. You may not have heard of that. That's a human disease in the mind, in the brain. Mad cow disease, you probably heard about that one. That is a prion-based issue. Scrapie in sheep, another prion-based issue. What happens is it creates these sponge-like holes, soft spots in the brain tissue. Now, unlike a virus or a bacteria, it has no DNA or RNA. There's no informational capacity being moved on. It's not a virus making other viruses. It's not DNA replicating and making liver cells or skin cells. There's no information. No information. Keep that in mind. It's coming back to the hypothesis. No information passed. propagates by causing bumping into other proteins and causing those proteins to also malform into their pathogenic form. Pathogenic, bad. And it causes protein accumulation, clumping or plaquing, like a clog in a sink. And then eventually the cell dies because it can't operate with all these clogs and plaques of malformed proteins. Now what happens is these proteins, malform one meets a normal one, causes it to malform. It's a chain reaction. Now they go malform, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. But again, because there's no nucleic acids, no DNA, RNA, no informational stuff is being passed from one to the other. Keep in mind, no information. No information. Nothing of value to pass. Or nothing to pass. I'll just say nothing of value to pass. It causes these brain diseases, and what happens is those misfolded proteins clump together, like I said, create plaques. And then what happens is those plaques will disrupt brain tissue. They create holes like Swiss cheese in the brain, and they cause extreme, severe neurological damage. A sheep with scrapie, okay, that has this will run its head into a fence post or to a fence over and over and over and over and over until it's bloody because its brain is being chewed up from the inside. It's really, really sad. Okay, so now let's get this started. Hypothesis time. You create an existential threat. Achoo! You create authoritarian rules and regulations that have no value other than to either, they have no health-wise value, just built to control and upset the populace. And you have propaganda blaring in your ear about how wonderful this all is, or how many cases are, and stay scared and stay anxious. Now, originally I thought that there was no such thing as COVID. And the reason is because they couldn't be identified from influenza A. So if you can't tell the difference between the two, it's got to be this. I think that I was wrong in this analysis. Okay? Because they were using a thing called polymerase chain reaction, PCR. Okay? We all saw it in the lab, to identify this existential threat. Even though that there are big words on front of every PCR machine, do not use this for diagnostic tool. It is not to be used for a diagnostic tool. Never use this for a diagnostic tool. This is not a diagnostic tool. And they use it for a diagnostic tool. Maybe somebody tinkered with influenza A and put a tag on it. This is very common in biology. Okay, if you're using PCR or another tool, how do you know it is unless it is radioactive, it lights up? You have to have a way to identify it. So if you play with influenza A and you put a tag on it, even just 10 pieces of DNA that you can attach to and light up, you can identify that from regular influenza A. Maybe that was, and this is me, okay? Nobody else is telling you this. Maybe that was the tool to bring in the real issue I want to talk about. You can identify it now, your existential threat, and you have seen it, so you hear cases, and you can quantify it to some extent. You can't even track it down completely, but the authoritarian rules and nonsense to do it are being thrown down on you. Maybe that was the side effect. Maybe the real reason that this was all done is to create the vaccine. the real poison. It gives you something to point at while they develop the thing that really is what they were trying to do. It is possible to create a biological agent that will act differently under different conditions. Okay? Absolutely, totally, we know how to do this. If a biological agent comes after A, it acts in this way. If it comes after B, it acts in this way. Okay? We know that this can be done. Imagine, and we're getting to my hypothesis, hang tight. If a biological agent can act in different ways based on a hormone that it encounters. This was I was wandering around thinking about the other day. Well, what hormones could it encounter? Well, there's hundreds of hormones in the human body. Well, which are the ones that it could really encounter that would change the action of a biological agent? The first one I went to is testosterone. I'm a boy. We lean in that direction. So what happens if you had a biological agent that if it bound with testosterone and it attacked a different place in the body than if that same biological agent attached to another hormone? Stay with me. What if consider that a biological agent that binds to testosterone may go after the vascular system. Okay? It goes after nitric oxide production. It goes after the smooth muscle that runs those veins and arteries and capillaries. And it slows down the blood by thickening it or increasing platelet activity. Who knows? Well, that would explain why perfectly healthy 15-year-old men, fighting age men who play football and are very healthy and lift weights and take the skin off their chicken, get 3 shots and then suddenly fall down dead on a football field from myocarditis. Cardiothoracic embolism down here. Advanced venous insufficiency. It goes after the vascular system. I'm thinking nitric oxide, but again, I'm going too far into the woods here. If it binds with testosterone. Now, what happens if it binds with estrogen? Where would it go? To the vascular system? Reproductive organs? Good target if you were creating a biological weapon. What if, just think about it, if a biological agent binds with estrogen, it goes into neural tissue. Like those prions we talked about. Maybe the binding of this biological agent creates prions. It's a good possibility. Another question asked. If a biological agent binds with estrogen and it goes into the brain and it acts like a prion, misfolded proteins causing holes in spongy areas in the brain, what would happen? Well, like that sheep with Scrapey that bangs its head on the fence post and bloodies itself, would this not lead to an environmental tool like the propaganda coming in to cause instability in the behavior? this could explain why so many liberal older white women who have been boosted up 14 times are screaming for people that hate them, or hitting cops with cars, or wearing a broiler pan outside saying they're going to be a warrior. As these prions malform these proteins and bind and create plaques and these vacuoles in the brain, mentition, thought, the concept of thinking starts to just degrade, and they start acting in unpredictable and very violent ways. And remember, they still got the Blair, the existential threat. They can change a threat anytime they want. That's psychological warfare. Authoritarian rule, right? They don't want to be told what to do, so they don't want. And then, even better, the blare of the propaganda in their ears while their brains are being attacked by these proteins and being made into Swiss cheese. Now, as your brain does that and it breaks the prefrontal cortex down, it's going to go inside. It's going to go deeper. It's going to go to the limbic system where the emotions are held. Ladies, your emotions are on a very tenuous thread anyway. Now, imagine what would happen if an infectious agent made of proteins that are malformed that can create plaques and holes in your head can go after your limbic system. Now you get, again, women driving cars in the cops. Now you get women screaming and yelling about people that absolutely flipping hate them and would kill them in an instant because their brains are now infected and damaged by prion activity, malformed protein activity. The head's becoming Swiss cheese. They're the sheep running into the fence. Mad cow disease, those animals just waste away. It's sad. It's sad. Deer have it too. It's chronic wasting disease. Hypothesis. Would anyone create a biological agent that can bond with a particular hormone to have different actions on the human body, especially younger people and older people, in order to move forward an environmental condition of their choice? Existential threat, authoritarian rules that make no sense and cause upset and grief and anxiety, constant propaganda, pathological altruism, feminism, all it. So that big ball communism being fed by a biological agent designed to create the exact conditions necessary to have the situation we're having now. That's my hypothesis. Could it be done? Yes. Who would want to do something like that? There's a couple of different groups, a couple of different countries that may want to design something with an effect just like that. And again, the guys, the fighters, the guys that are healthy and will pick up a bat and swing it at you, fall down dead. Their vascularity is attacked. And the women who now have this prion activity in their brain are now acting in even more irrational ways than women usually act, and will cause more damage to their societies and communities and everything else. I hear you. But hey, Doc, I'm not a doc. What about guys that got 14 boosters and aren't affected like that? Well, we see them outside where the girls go, screaming and yelling and throwing things and acting in terrible ways. It's a good question. I was thinking about this morning. Hey, that's a guy. Why isn't his vascularity attacked? Why is he acting with the women and not with the men when the biological agent is supposed to attack his vascularity if it binds with testosterone? And my answer came back, you're an idiot. They have low T. They have more estrogen than testosterone. So the biological agent is going to act on them more like the women than the men, because they don't have the level of testosterone. Now that's a whole different study. Why don't they have testosterone? I mean, you've got the environmental conditions that are going to tell them not to be a man. Is it in the food? Is it in the water? Is it in the soy milk? I don't know. We'll do that study another day. My hypothesis is, can a biological agent be created that acts differently based on gender because of hormones? And the binding of that biological agent to hormones has different affects in the sexes, affecting the vascularity to kill them and kill them off, make them absolutely mad cow disease, crazy sauce, chewing through their brain, chewing at their limbic system, causing those plaques, and making it so they can't think anymore. And now they're doing things that, again, if this was mad cow disease or anything else, those animals act irrationally, and they act not in their own best interest because their brains are blown. This hypothesis requires a little bit more refinement. Got to keep reading, got to keep looking, and then if I can come up with a good hypothesis, then it becomes, how do we design a method to experiment with this? And I don't think anybody in the world would pay me to give rats 14 COVID shots and other rats not 14 COVID shots based on the gender of the rat, and then constantly put them under stress and blare noise at them, and then see which one their brains will blow, which ones will waste away, which ones just suddenly walk around and fall over and die that were perfectly healthy. I don't think anybody would pay for that. So I've got to think about a good theoretical model to try to run this hypothesis through and test it and see if it's junk, which it could be. If it's junk, it's science, real science. Remember, I'm the last classical scientist around. If it's junk, we just bowl it up, throw it away, we start over. We don't try to make the situation fit the idea. We throw away the idea, we come up with different ideas. Or do we find a way to test this in a real-world environment? Unless, and this was my thought while it was raining about noon, what I see on the screen, what I listen to and absorb daily, maybe I can use the environment that I see as the test. If I can go, look at this chick, look at this guy, and I can use the environment as a test, I don't have to set up an experimental function 1 time as a case study, 2 times as a case study, 18 times as a case study. 40,000 times is not a case study. So it's possible that we don't have to run an experiment. We can use the environment as the testing area. All we have to do is prove the 4 pieces to make the communism, which is probably about 10 seconds easy to do. You can do that over your coffee. And then we have to prove that the biological agent somehow binds with hormones and has different affects based on how it binds with the hormones. I told you it was going to be a very different video. But again, I'm a dinosaur. I'm a classically trained scientist. I don't think the science is ever settled. I don't think you should follow the science. I think you should explore, think about things, do your research, and come up with a good question. The good question makes a great hypothesis, and then we can take the step forward to designing the method to test that. So I'm at the still polishing the hypothesis stage. I will give you more updates as I can polish that diamond and see where it goes. I think I'm onto something. A existential threat caused with rules that cause anxiety and no value, constant propaganda under an organism with a biological agent that is acting differently based on their hormonal components will create different affects in those organisms. I'm working on it. If you have something you'd like to contribute, put it down in the comments. We're going to work on a hypothesis. And remember, this is not just me out in the air. This is very near and dear to me. And that's because the woman I love the most acted extremely irrationally starting in 2019. And I'm wondering, peri and postmenopausal, you've got hormones in your system. She lined up for every single booster and then put herself on the waiting list for the next 2 because existential threat, authoritarian rules, propaganda, feminism, right? Soft bigotry or low expectations, all of that nonsense. Oppressor, oppressed junk. It's near and dear to me because I wonder if that's what happened to her head. And it would make me sad if there was no way to slow it down or reverse it. There really isn't. Once a prion activity goes into the brain of an animal, we're animals, by the way. There's no way to get it out. You can slow it down, stave it off, or you have to eliminate the animal. That's why this hypothesis is kind of important to me to develop, because if I lost somebody because I'm right or I'm on the right track, what if I could prevent somebody else from not losing the person they love? I could prevent another 18-year-old man from not falling down dead with no discernible reason. What if I could stop another 55-year-old man from having a cardiac thoracic embolism? Those are what ifs. Big enough what ifs that if I'm on the right track, I might be able to help the person I love, and I also might be able to help other people before they're too far gone and it's too late. Especially the ladies. Because a guy will die under this hypothesis. But women go on and do more damage and more damage and more damage. And part of me says that environmental condition, whoever designed this biological agent under these environmental conditions is going like this. It's exactly what we wanted. Absolutely what we wanted. Do I really want to see women get stabbed protecting people that really hate them? No. No. If I'm on to something, I'm on to something. Updates as they come in. Talk to you guys a little later. Bye.